Live stream.
And I only have until 5 this evening.
Okay, so let's keep it snappy then. How would you like to start Administrator Simonson?
Well, Cassie's put together kind of an agenda for today, kind of in reverse order from our last meeting, so that we could get through some of these things and get a budget put together to publish.
Okay.
So I think she wanted to start with board and commission requests.
Okay.
And so Cassie, go ahead.
Okay, so in the packet that we had sent over, we included the boards and commissions requests that were included in the budget document at the end. So we did include a PDF of those. And so I think at this point, it might be best to just go through each area and kind of review, get a high level review of what each one's requests are. And then we can kind of say, you guys can all discuss which ones you want to include in the budget and which ones you might want to postpone to a future year or something.
Okay.
So I can go ahead and share my screen and get, and that way we can all see it at once. So just give me 1 second here.
Welcome, Trustee Miller.
Are you feeling better? Yes.
Okay, is everyone able to see? I probably need to make it bigger, don't I?
Yep,
That's
there you
good.
go. Thank you.
All right. So the first one on the list is the Historic Preservation Commission. Their total request for 2022 was this $4,975, which was made up of the items that are listed above.
No problem from the mayor.
How about any comments from the liaison to that commission? Trustee Rogan, is there anything here that we haven't had a request from them before? So this is a new addition to the agenda or to the budget.
Yeah, thank you, Administrator Simonson. So Yanni, when she was here, worked with the commission, and these are the items. This is the wish list of items for the commission. Because they haven't had a budget request, and because we now have the Historic Preservation Ordinance in place, and we would like to grow the community mindset of Lyons as an historic place, and perhaps market that tourism-wise. We think that this is a reasonable amount to get that started. Of course, we don't yet know how many sandstone plaques we would need for landmarks because we don't know how many we'll have, but hopefully we'll get that program rolling in 2022. Happy to answer any questions.
So we can go about this two ways. One is to go through all the requests and then give a nod, or take them item by item and decide as you go.
I think if we have an objection to a single item, maybe we should bring it up. But I think that we can give a nod to all of the items under each of the commission requests.
It's fine with us. We just were.
How does the rest of the board feel?
I think that's quicker.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay. Any objections to anything on the Historical Preservation Committee requests?
I have a question, Mr. Mayor.
Go ahead, sir.
It's more for all my colleagues on the board. When it comes to conferences in a community where it costs so much to live, a lot of members may be able to afford to pay for the conferences themselves, like some of us have done with CML. I would like to see it more for all commissioners being on a need basis. A particular commissioner is serving the community, but is struggling in the year, so that I don't have a problem paying for something. But if it's, many of us, and I have done my own CML, I've covered it myself because that's just what I want to do for the community. Plus, it kind of puts a little skin in the game. I hate to see us pay for so many conferences for, any commission, not just this, but this is all of and then leave right away. But if those that can afford it can pay on their own, give them a little skin in the game to stay and hopefully keep retention a little bit better. You know, it's a 50-50, goes either way. I'm just more curious how other people feel about it and do it on a need basis.
Any other comments? Go
So
ahead.
Trustee Caravas, are you suggesting that we first ask commissioners to pay for themselves, and if they say that they can't, then we pay for them?
Yeah.
I'm fine with that, but I think since we're asking them to volunteer their time and they put a lot of work into the commission, I kind of consider it a benefit for them to get funded to go to these conferences, because they likely wouldn't be going to the conferences otherwise, but for them serving on the commission. So I look at it as kind of the least we can do for them working so hard. But, you know, I'll go along with obviously whatever my colleagues think.
I don't have a problem with this one because it's a startup commission and new ideas and that kind of thing. I see that the PCDC wants to send some people to. I'm with Trustee Caravas. I don't think this should be an every year recurring thing, but because the Historic Preservation Commission is a startup, I don't have a problem with it. And yeah, that's where I come out.
Further comments?
I agree with Trustee Rogan. I think we ask a lot of our volunteers. I think we ask a lot of their time and energy. I think if they're willing to volunteer and then additionally volunteer their time to go to a conference so that they can be better at serving on our commissions, it's an investment this town needs to make. And it's an investment that we're not making by paying board members or even really compensating them in any way. You know, I don't know, you know, I see some other ones here that every commissioner needs to go. I don't know if that's necessarily true that every member needs to go every year, but I think for this specific commission, it's a new commission. I think we have a lot to learn. I think we have a lot to do, and we need to support our volunteers. If they're passionate about this, we need to make sure they have the skills to actually execute what we're asking them to do.
Any further comments?
I would agree with Trustees Rogan and Waugh on their comments in this case.
Can I just ask if you have an approximate, because I like I stated previously, I have no objection to any of these on the Historic Preservation Commission request, but for the sake of clarity, do you have any idea what sending 3 members of the Historic Preservation Commission to that conference would be out of this total? Trustee Rogan?
You know, I don't at my fingertips. I'd have to look that up. It depends, of course, whether it will be a virtual conference or an in-person conference.
Okay.
But I can try to find out.
Okay. But like I said, I have no problem with this one if everybody doesn't mind moving on. How do we feel? Okay.
All right, the next one is the Planning, Community and Development Commission, and their total request is $2,800.
The Planning, Community and Development Commission is one of the extremely important commissions in town. It's required by state statute. I have no problem with this total request. Further comments?
I just have a comment here.
Yes, sir.
And you're going to hear me say this, or maybe I won't have to say it after everyone. I don't think that it's the town's responsibility to provide snacks at meetings. That's the first thing I'll say. In terms of conferences, again, I just want to add, you know, I don't know if it's necessary for every member to go every year. I think a more realistic budget would be to have, you know, half go and alternate years. I think it's also important, and I didn't mention this earlier, that it's good for other municipalities and citizens of the state of Colorado to see that we are actively engaged in governing our town. So I think there's also a marketing aspect to this. So I would approve this without snacks and for half of the commissioners to go every other year.
I just have a question about what's APA membership?
American Planning Association.
Okay, I figured that might be what it stood for, but is that like necessary?
It's to be able to get them, I think they get a newsletter every month and they get access to all their documents that the American Planning Association has on their website. So like if they want examples of things. I'm not sure, again, why all 7. It seems to me, but I wasn't involved with planning this. So it seems to me they might be able to have a couple memberships, you know, because the staff has one. And then if the chair had one, but maybe Trustee Juan knows what else they get with that. Or if, let's see, is Philip on the call? Let's see.
Yeah, I'm sorry, I was confused. I thought that was 7 to the conference, not 3 to the conference. I think
Yeah, they have
membership
3 to the
makes sense.
conference and 7 for membership.
I was confused on that. I apologize.
Uh-huh. So we can find out a little bit more about that if you'd like us to. And if they can access a membership through like their chair's login, that should be fine too.
Yeah, that's a little bit redundant.
Yeah, I agree. I don't think all 7 need to get membership. Have the chair and the vice chair get memberships, and that way they can access it. And if they find something useful, they can share it with the others.
Okay, so we can find that one out a little, fine tune it further. Is everyone okay with that? If we do 3 to, half to conference and then whatever's needed for a membership that they can share. Okay.
Sounds good.
Right, and I think the snacks isn't necessarily for like the planning commission meetings. I think it's for the comp plan, just because, as you know, some of those events over the years, if you've gone to them, you spend like the whole evening, 7 to 9 or 6 to 9 or whatever. I think they just offer it, but just want you to know that there was on the municipal listserv recently, there was a question of which of your communities provide snacks and who don't, and it was a mixed bag.
That's funny.
Yeah, I think that's to bribe citizens to show up for those meetings. So
I do too.
There are some on other requests that we'll get to that are food for their meetings, I think. So,
Yes.
You get into, you can't bring one snack because you got to bring one that's gluten-free, one that's vegan, one that's, blah, blah, blah. So it's expensive quickly.
Yeah.
Okay.
So the next request is from the Lions Historical Society or Museum as we know it. Some of you, I think most of you are aware, but we have a partnership with the school district and the museum that each of the 3 agencies pay a third of the operational costs to keep the museum open and functional. And so this request goes for our third of that. And then Laverne Johnson is asking for $1,000 to go toward Good Old Days, I believe.
Comments?
I'll take the fallout on this. The museum operations, yes, there has been an existing agreement for a long time. I've got no problem with that. Good Old Days, I think it should be treated like we've moved to all other town special events. If somebody wants to sponsor it, the town should provide publicity help and use of town facilities if need be, but I think the town should get out of the business of paying out of pocket for special events and let sponsors of special events, including Good Old Days, come to us. And if they, again, the town can provide assistance, but I don't think we should I think we should get out of the business of funding special events.
Further comments?
I mean, I would agree with that. I don't think Good Old Days is basically non-existent at this point.
Yep.
As sad as that is to me, because I loved good old days when it was actually good old days. I think there's a way to resurrect it, but as a town event, not as it has been in the past, and not the way that it's going this way, because it doesn't exist at this point. It's good old half day. It's not even good. So
I would agree. Sorry about dropping off. I guess my Zoom decided to update by itself.
Further comments?
I declare.
Okay,
All right.
all right, I can ascertain from there. I
Yeah.
just need, okay.
All right. The
Economic-
next,
Yep, go ahead.
the next one is the Economic Vitality Commission, and their request is for $300.
So I'll type up, since I'm the liaison here too. These folks work so hard and give a lot of time, and snacks for the meeting to the tune of $100 for the year, I think is a completely reasonable request. And as it has stood, Paul, the chair, has been buying them out of pocket from Moxie, and it would just be a nice gesture if he were able to be reimbursed for that. So that's what I have to say about that.
Comments?
I agree with Trustee Wah, no on funding food for volunteer commission meetings. If, I don't know how many commissions we have, I've lost track, 12, 13, 14. If we start providing food for the EBC meeting, I see the LAHC wants it too. We might as well set a policy of providing food for 14 different volunteer commission meetings. Most of them are virtual anyway these days. So my position is no on providing food for volunteer meetings. If they want to bring their own food, that's fine. But I don't think we should set that precedent, and I'm not in favor of that for any of the commissions that ask for it for their own meetings.
Further comments?
I would concur.
We have the longest meetings and we don't get food.
Not free food anyway.
And not free food.
Oh, I don't have a problem with it, but if that's the board's position, then
That was two people, so is there four?
Let's see.
I mean, yeah, I agree with that as well. I don't, if people want to bring food to the meetings, then they should have potluck.
Yeah. So there's your four.
Who's the fourth? You?
No, Trustee Caravas, Mayor Pro Tem
Caravas,
Browning, and Trustee Wah.
Okay. We'll take it out of all of them. It sounded like maybe it was okay for this comp plan one for the public. That's kind of the impression I got, but not for our ongoing regular meetings. People can volunteer and bring their own. Okay,
And I just want to make sure that that will be tracked against the overall cost of the comprehensive plan, any of this additional money. I just want to make sure that we have a full accounting for what the comp plan costs us when we're done with it.
It's accounted for through invoices that should be specific to the comp plan.
Okay.
The next one is the LAHC. Their total request is $13,250. I will note that in the budget currently is $18,000 for the creative district. So this is in addition to that. And that's in the 2022 budget.
And do you have any idea, Cassie, what the Creative Industries Conference cost is?
Oh, goodness. I am not sure on that.
How many people plan on attending? Because that's what we've been getting into, is how many people from these commissions should be allotted to be able to attend. So I'd like that, number. We already talked about food for meetings. And then I'd just like to just make a statement in regard to public art. And that's that I think that the latitude that's been given to the LAHC in regard to projects that they are involved in do not come to the Board of Trustees first. And the most glaring example of that has been painting the wall leading into the council chambers. I'm just going to be perfectly frank and honest about it. That is totally different than painting utility boxes around town. So I don't know of this particular allocation, how much of that may be earmarked for a concept like painting the side of the council chambers, which actually has not ever been brought to the board's attention for approval. So until I know that, I would not be in support of allocating funds for that purpose. Any further comments?
Yeah, just a question, Mayor Angelo. So just to make sure I understand, you are saying you would be okay with funding public art as long as it's not public art that is on the municipal building?
I would be in favor of any public art that is approved by the Board of Trustees, to be perfectly honest with you, that it be brought before the Board of Trustees before there is a two things. Before funds have been used to, let's just be honest, used to have a drawing rendered of conceptual that would be placed on Town Hall before the Board of Trustees ever approved the concept. So I don't mind public art. I'm all for public art. I'm all for other things that are related to the LAHC. But all I would like is the capability for the Board of Trustees to basically have the authority, which they do have, to approve any of these projects. It's our money. We're allocating the money. But go ahead and finish your question if you'd like.
I just want to clarify something, and I think I know that you're referring to the comp that was shown at Android Jones's show, and I do not have any reason to believe any town funds were expended upon that, or that he is wanting to be reimbursed for that. I think it was just part of the artist's art show. And up until now, the public art that has been placed has not had Board of Trustees approval. And I don't know that there has been any problem with that. So I personally don't know enough about art to be able to judge what should or should not be placed where. And you know, that's not in my area of expertise, which is why I would leave it to the LAHC, because it is their area of expertise. And we appoint people to that commission for their expertise. So we should take advantage of it. So I am for funding public art.
I am for funding public art also. But what I don't appreciate is postings online that I'm just being honest, that would create support for a rendering on the side of the council Chambers building without the Board of Trustees having any input into it. I think that is highly improper. I'm sorry. That's just the way I
LAHC had
feel
nothing
about
to
it.
do with it. They had nothing to do with it. So, you know,
Pardon me?
an artist on their own created something and showed it at an art show. And they
That was
don't need
not-
the Board of Trustees approval to do that. So
That was not the gist of the post.
Yeah.
the
gist of
person who posted it isn't you. Okay,
gist-
we're totally losing the thread
No,
here.
no.
Yeah,
The
and I
gist of the post stated that it was proposed to be
Yeah.
on town hall.
Yeah, there has been some discussion of that by some LAHC members. So it wasn't just the artists' discussion, the idea of doing that. It's it's not. That idea has been tossed around for since I was on as the liaison. So not necessarily Android Jones, but some piece of public art, you know, being there. That's been on their minds. So just throwing that out there. Let's move on. But I agree. I think this is kind of a high price tag for the LAHC. They raise a lot of money on their own through different various and sundry fundraisers. They do have a creative, you know, they do have yeah, I feel like it's a little high, but I would be willing to, you know, go 10,000. I don't know. Would somebody else want to throw a number out there?
What's the additional cost of forming the creative district? Finance Director Eystone?
We have 18,000 in the 2022 budget.
What did they have budgeted for this last year for public art?
Great question. $8,000.
Yeah, that's what I thought. It was right around that.
Mayor Angela,
Yes.
would it help the BOT to give a little bit of background for the LAHC, what they've done regarding public art?
Sure.
So they had the Bell of Renewal was the first time that I recall that they had funding from the general fund for a particular piece. And at the time, that piece was not designed, but the board at that time approved the funding. Then they asked, then the submission happened and they did also get additional funds through fundraising for it. So that was all in, I think it was about $18,000 for that piece. In terms of the 8,000, it wasn't used in, or maybe it was 9,000 in 2020, but because of COVID was not used. And then they asked for the 8,000 in 2021, which they are using. And so, yes, they've asked for 12,000. My understanding is that would be for right now art with a Ute sculpture that they also have some grant funding for, in addition to a mural project. But I think from their perspective, it's a little bit chicken and an egg thing. Which comes first? Is it designing or is it the place first? And so I think, you know, they're asking for about 12,000 for public art, but certainly, you know, whatever the board is comfortable with. And then to answer your question, the Creative Industries Conference, that comes out to be about $500 if they send 2 members of the LAHC. Staff goes as part of a state funding. And so that would be about 175 for the registration, 250 for hotel, and 75 for meals, roughly. So I hope that helps.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Further
Mayor?
comments from the board?
Mr. Mayor?
Yes.
Victoria, what's the difference between public art pieces and the legacy pieces that the board approves when it's brought to us?
Legacy pieces are usually donated by someone as a permanent art display. So far, I don't believe we paid for any legacy pieces.
How many
other
legacy
than,
pieces have we collected over the last several years?
I can think of maybe 4.
And what do we do with those?
They are placed permanently, like we have a couple that are attached to buildings. And then there's one out here in the plaza at Town Hall. And then the Bell of Renewal, as you heard, was they did get private donations, and then the town funded the rest of that. It was placed at the confluence of.
And the request to make those legacy pieces come to the LAHC first, or come through you?
Usually, just like the public art, when they want to place a piece of public art, we have an application. We have a meeting to talk about its safety, in regard to wind and fire and flood and all that. And people, if it's an attractive nuisance to folks, the legacy comes the same way. I get an application saying this piece of art would like to be donated. And then we discuss best location and how to care for it, cost to maintain it. And then we have let the board know that there's a piece of legacy art.
And
go ahead.
have you or staff or the commission, do we have certain places set aside for legacy pieces? Because what I'm getting at is how much space do we have for more? Do we want to?
It all depends individually on where the piece would be best situated.
That becomes an asset of the town and insured by the town and everything and all that, and liability on the town. Okay.
Yep.
Okay. And then while I ask those questions, I know based on some of those questions and based on previous board members' requests to have a much deeper in-depth discussion on how this current creative district is going to work, as they want to form a 501c3. Well, the library did that and then got themselves rolling and are no longer part of Town Alliance. We need more information on what this actually involved. It's been pretty sparse of what this is going to entail. Do we need both of them? If they create the district, then the district is like the downtown district. And so it's run through a staff member, but if it's a 501c3, can you do that? There's a lot of information I've heard some other members ask about we don't quite have. So I'd like to see more information how these two are going to, I'm assuming they'll kind of move down a path together, but on their fundraising and what they're currently requesting, I prefer at the current budget issues and with much capital improvement and fire mitigation that we need to get to, which is going to be a lot higher amounts. I don't have a problem keeping this at roughly where it's been at the last year or so, and maybe a slight increase to about 9,000.
Further comments?
I would agree with that.
I also agree.
And I'll agree as well.
Trustee Mo.
Anybody else?
Yes.
Okay.
I'm fine with that number as well, just for the purpose of this budget. I was going to suggest a 20% increase, which would be 9,600, but I'm fine with 9,002. That's more than a 10% increase, which is, I think, what we did in several other areas. But I had some more general comments that relate to a number of the things that have been brought up already. I'm presently the co-liaison, I guess, to the LAHC. Mayor Angelo and I were going to swap out month to month on attending their meetings, and I've been to 2. And I've had some conversations with the LAHC chair and another member or 2 about some of these things, so it's not new to them. I confess I did not realize until I sat through a couple of the LAHC meetings how the art area of town funding and stuff worked, and I still lack understanding in a number of respects. The LAHC has several different sources of funding. One is the annual appropriation from the town, the 8,000 last year and 9,000 or so this year. A second is funds that they raise on their own from events that they host. I think they have something out at, they have like a farm to table dinner or something like that. And they have art shows as well, some of which take place on town facilities. So that's a second source of funds. They also, year after year, apply for and receive LCF grants. I asked already whether their own raised funds were reflected somewhere in the town budget. And I was told that they are, but I don't know where it is. I can't find it. And somebody will have to point that out to me. But it seems to me that there is a lack of understanding, at least on my part, maybe the rest of the board understands it better than I do, as to how the LHC, LAHC brings together those various sources of fundings and what accountability they have, if any, to the town board. For example, are they free to spend funds that they raise themselves on anything they want to? There was discussion at one of the LAHC meetings that I attended about actually making a partial payment to the mural artist for a conceptual drawing. I don't know if they did or didn't, but it was at least discussed. And as the mayor said, that didn't come to the town board. Can they combine part of their town appropriated money with part of their fundraising, their own self-raised money with an LCF grant to fund a project? And if they use 1/3 of each, does the town board have any say in that? Or is it because 2/3 of it came from other sources, not appropriated tax money? Is that something they can do on their own? I know for sure that if they didn't spend their $9,000 in 2020, that they do not have the authority to carry that over into 2021 and spend it as they choose in 2021. That's not the way those things work in any area. That they could come to the town board and ask us to reappropriate it, but that's not within their authority. So to me, and this relates to the $18,000 for the cultural district. I'm in favor of the cultural district, and I have no problem with the $18,000 to get it started. But before I'm going to vote to appropriate that much money, plus the annual appropriation to the LAHC, I need to have an understanding of how this whole area works. I don't want the current board or future boards to vote project by project on whether we want this piece of art or don't want this piece of art. I think that's not something that the board is good at, and it's not worth the board's time. However, I do think if you're going to do something like spend $16,000 total from whatever source on painting a mural on the side of town hall, very visible to the public, that needs to be run by the board of trustees before you undertake that project, because I'm concerned about reaction from the public. Oh, well, if you can put up a $16,000 mural on the side of town hall, then why can't you, pave my street or fix the drainage down the street or something like that? So I think I need an understanding before I can vote for the cultural district appropriation and vote for this part of the budget as to how this process works. What's the accountability? What are the sources of funds? And basically understand how the whole thing's organized. If there's going to be a 501c3, who's going to be on the board? Who's going to select the board? Are they going to have nominations from the board of trustees appoint that, or is the LAHC itself going to serve as the board? I don't know. And if we're talking about $18,000 plus a $13,000 request, that's $31,000 total. And I'm not comfortable with voting to appropriate that much money without getting this whole area kind of organized. To me, it's different. The way that my impression from past years is, if they were going to get a 1 year or 2 year loan of a piece of art that wasn't permanent and pay $1,000 or so to the artist, they generally would inform the town board about that, and nobody ever had a problem with it. But to me, that's the mayor said, it's different than spending $16,000 on putting a mural on a public building. So between now and the time we vote to approve the budget, I would like to have a session, and I've asked for this before. It could be a workshop, could be part of the meeting, to get these details ironed out of how the LHC and its various sources of funds function, and what role and accountability the town board has in that. So for this particular, 9,000 is fine with me. I was going to suggest 9,600, a 20% increase, but no as to food for meetings. But the rest of it, before I can vote yes for that part of the budget, we need to get this kind of nailed down and organized and see how it's going to work. I'm not willing to sign an $18,000 blank check for a cultural district.
Further comments?
Is this something that, just a suggestion here, potentially we could remove the 18,000 for now so that we can get the budget approved, and then revisit it when, we can get a workshop or something on the, and then do a budget amendment potentially?
Well, they were prepared to do that tonight. And it was not scheduled. So I think they're willing to have that discussion whenever the board is ready. There was a 2-page fact sheet, but I understand there's more discussion to have. I don't know that they have all their answers, like who's going to serve and all of that yet. But I think what they're asking for is similar to the library. The town funded the library and then they transitioned to their own over a couple of years. I see this very similar, that the LAHC would like to transition into a creative art district. So I think we can have something between now and when we adopt the budget. We could put it on the November 15th agenda if we'd like to, or December 6th, or something in between.
Either of those works for me.
The other item, Finance Director Eystone, is that on the total request, that should be lowered to 9,000.
Absolutely. I will make note of that.
Thank
Yep,
you.
we have that one.
Thank you.
So in regard to the commission request, that's what we're moving forward with. And it sounds like we need to have a little more discussion on the creative district.
Yep.
Okay, so then we have Human Services and Aging. If Trustee Rogan's going to be leaving here shortly, so I want to keep moving here.
Okay.
This one is a total request of 13,000. I believe that is what was included in the last budget as well.
I don't know if Trustee Miller wants to explain how this works.
Yeah, so with the Goodwill Grants, this is something that every year we give out to folks can apply. 501c3 organizations that are local can apply for grants that
You froze, Trustee Miller.
that have been granted this money. Sorry, my internet's unstable.
We can hear you now.
Okay, good. Before, most of the money goes to LEAF for specific things. But this year we actually were able to give some of the money to the food forest. They were able to get their 501c3. And also to Lions Prepared was given some of the funding. So we sit down and, go through the proposals and grant that money out. We usually have incrementally 13,000 we usually incrementally up it about $500 a year. So the fact that it's 13,000 again this year is, I guess, okay. I would like to see it bumped up 500, but, pandemic and all, I guess I can hang with the 13.5 again. I mean, the 13.
I'm in support of that and would support bumping it to 13.5 if that's what we've been doing in recent years. We're a small town. We don't have our own social services agency. We don't provide any kind of local medical services. We don't provide any kind of a homeless shelter, unlike some bigger communities do. And I think this amount of appropriation to basically support private sector charitable organizations that provide those services that the town doesn't afford is the least we can do. In particular, some of this money gets used for senior services.
Mhm.
Have a fairly substantial elderly retired population in Lyons, and I guess I'm one of them. I know some of those people, and they do appreciate the services they get, like the events at the Waltz Health Center. And I think this is money well spent, and I support it. And would support going 13.5 on that.
Additional comments?
I concur.
As do I.
And I do as well. To the 13.5 increase also.
Can I ask a question, please?
Go ahead.
If I was just listening to this art discussion of you want approval before it goes, is it possible to ask this group to bring forward to the board where they're proposing this money gets spent before it goes? I mean, I don't know if it goes to individuals. I don't know if it goes to 501s. How are we accounting for it?
Trustee Miller, do you have any insight in regard to that, being the liaison?
Are you asking about this commission?
Yeah,
Or,
I mean, are you giving any of this to just individuals?
oh, no, absolutely not, no.
Well, but I
This is
heard you
all
say that the farm group, but they weren't a 501 yet.
Yeah, they did get their, we were not going to give it to them until they got their 501c3.
So it's only going to nonprofits?
Yes,
Okay.
it's only going to nonprofit organizations, and they have to, the Lions Prepared actually was not a 501c3 yet either. Both of those groups got their 501c3 before we gave them this money.
Okay.
And they got it fairly late in the year. They didn't get it until, I believe, September, because of that issue. And Lisa has all of the documentation on that stuff.
Thank you.
Mhm.
Okay,
Mr. Mayor,
go ahead, sir.
based on what Victoria brought up, do our auditors not audit these monies going in and out?
Well, they, just like it, I mean, this is one line item in the budget that says, it says Human Services and Aging Grants or whatever, 13. So if they pick that item that year, I'm sure they do. I just was, again, I just listening to your other conversation, it was kind of like, oh, I don't even know who it goes till after the fact. I don't know who's selecting it. I don't, so I just was wondering how it kind of worked, because it sounded like, I thought they were all 501s, but it sounds like some of them are in the formation of, which is fine if that's how the board wants.
So who writes the check? Who signs the check?
I guess the mayor and the clerk.
Yep, they do. And
And does
Yeah,
it show up
like-
in our AP? On our monthly meetings?
It should if there's a check written.
Yeah,
There is an application process, and it is, I
We have-
want to say all 501c3s. It's been the library for suicide and mental health
Yep.
discussions, the school for some programs that they do with the kids at the elementary school level. And then I think the bulk really ends up being LEAF, the Lions Emergency Assistance Fund. And as staff, we just kind of talk because with LCF is we kind of pool the same money around. So we apply for about, $15,000 worth of grants for summer concerts and senior programming, Parade of Lights. And then we have this fund that goes back out to the community. But it's, I think, also kind of a public relations thing for both. It's goodwill for the town to support these service industries. And then I think it's goodwill for LCF to support some of our community events that we have, including the Parade of Lights. So it's almost the same pot of money gets put in, but they do all get approved to Trustee Caravis.
Okay, well, that's fine. I was just asking since Victoria brought it up. It made it sound
Yeah.
like first I've heard anybody in staff question it since I've been on the board for 6 years. So just curious.
Yeah.
And, that's fine. So it sounds like there is a record. That's good. That's probably something.
Yeah, we do also.
That finance director can keep track of it and get to the next board, and then they go to budget.
Yeah, and we have all of the applications and all of the checks, and we're happy to share that if you ever need it.
Have we agreed to bump that to 13.5?
Yeah, you have plenty of people who would like to do that.
Okay. All right, let's move on.
The next one is the Parks and Rec Commission. We touched a little bit on this at the last workshop. They listed their budget priorities. My understanding was they weren't necessarily, expecting all of these to be funded in 2022, but they have them listed. Right now, I believe the 2022 budget includes the St. Vrain Trail, the Dirt Jump Park,
And $25,000 of matching funds for a grant for the Barton parcel cleanup.
that one's not in there yet. Because Dave was saying they weren't expecting that grant to come in until 2023.
Oh,
So, yeah, so if, we expected the grant to come in sooner, we could include that in 2022, but right now it's not in there.
okay.
Are we going to go through totals on these?
What do you mean? How much they want?
Yeah, St. Vrain Trail Extension, potential budget implications.
Well, that's already built into the budget at 152,000, 100,000 of which is the grant or the anonymous donation that was made,
Right.
and 52,000 from the parks reserves.
Okay.
But we have also asked the county to contribute toward it, so that will go down if they do.
And we had discussed previously that there may be some bicycle organizations we could submit grants to,
Yes, there's several.
but we don't know, but we haven't finalized any of those.
Well, they're in the budget at 152 to
Okay.
the town.
Okay. All right. And it may be less. All right. I know that there are a couple of trustees perhaps that may want to make a comment or two on the Martin parcel fire mitigation.
Mayor, could I clarify something on this list since
Go ahead, son.
I'm the PRC liaison and I brought this up and asked for clarification from them at their meeting last night. Yeah, the St. Vrain Trail Extension's already been budgeted for. Just wanted to confirm that they considered that a top priority. The Martin parcel fire mitigation, my suggestion would be that's an overlap with the wildfire task force because they address that as well. So perhaps we should take up fire mitigation, as kind of a whole subject, not just limited to the Martin parcel, but the PRC does have, part of their area of focus is open spaces. Maybe that parcel will be added to act formally to Bone Park someday. If not, it's a town-owned open space. So they wanted to list that they thought that was important too. And they didn't really, I don't think requested a specific amount, but we can take that up when we talk about fire mitigation generally. Under item 3, what they said last night was they really hadn't intended that to be a 3A as the Lot F trail proposal as a priority above the dirt jump park improvements. The situation on both of those is that Parks Director Cosgrove and the PRC have gotten quite a bit of information and a specific proposal already from a private company that does a lot of these bike dirt parks around the area and in other states as well. And I think the request there is 48,000, and it's almost like a ready to go project that the existing dirt park there it was done, I think, a lot with a lot of volunteer labor, and it's wearing down. It's getting to the point of being a safety risk. But what they said last night was that this company, and I'm sure they'll go through an appropriate process for this, is pretty much ready to go, and they think they could have that improved or redesigned with different skill levels and everything. And it sounds great. And they have examples that Director Cosgrove have looked at from other communities by next summer. So that's kind of like I guess you want to call it shovel ready or whatever project that also addresses an existing problem, which is that the existing park is deteriorated to the point that parts of it are really not usable or dangerous. The Lot F trail proposal, that is an idea that the PRC has been kicking around for a while, of putting kind of a beginner level, they call it a bike loop, on part of Lot F, but also trying to accommodate the existing use, which is that the schools use it for cross-country events several times a year, and they think that it could be designed where both things can be done there. But that's still in the preliminary kind of sketchy drawing stages, as well as, and we talked about this at the PRC last night, whether Lot F is to be annexed and what it's to be zoned are things that we've discussed here, are things we're probably going to take up in the near future. But until those issues are decided, going ahead and funding a use on Lot F before we decide whether we're going to annex it and how we zone it may be jumping the gun a little bit. So where they came out on this, the PRC, is they'd like to see the dirt park improvements go forward in 2022. They're going to continue working on Lot F depending on what the board decides to do with that. But if you wanted to draw a line as to where they're really asking for things for 2022, it would be number 1 and number 2, and then I guess 3B with 3A to be studied for the future. And they didn't have below that, they didn't have specific recommendations for 4 through 7. Those are all things that are kind of on the radar screen, but particularly number 5 will take really years to plan for. So that's where they come from. And I gotta say, I really like the idea of the dirt jump park improvements. You got Howe Ranch there that has some kind of advanced mountain bike skills courses. You've got, if you have the dirt jump park there with different skill levels from beginner to intermediate to even a few advanced, that's a accompanying attraction. And someday, some year, if you put like a beginner loop course on Lot F, it seems like to me you've got a real set of attractive things that would really enhance Lion's desirability as an outdoor recreation attraction. So I'm strongly in favor of it. And from all Director Cosgrove has said, the company that's basically done this kind of feasibility analysis on the dirt park really knows what they're doing. It looks like for $48,000, that's something that I'm strongly in favor of doing.
Thank you. Well, we know that the Parks Fund can definitely afford it, and I think it's a great idea also. And if there's a safety concern, I think we should address it sooner rather than later. Additional comments?
I have a couple.
Go ahead.
So agree. And if we could include in the budget for that a name that is much easier to say, I would also be much in favor of that. So some acronym or something, because it's dirt bike jump park. We all struggle. No, just seriously kidding. The other thing I will say is I see small dog park on here, and I want to just say that I don't have the numbers in front of me right now, but I can say that this town spends an awful lot of money on dog park and dog parks in general. And I don't think more than 25% of the dogs that live in this town are registered. So, I'm not a huge fan of spending more money on people that are not going to help support that by doing what they should do. I don't know if that's the answer. I was actually on the PRC when we started talking about a dog park so many years ago, and it was an issue there then, and it's an issue now. There's an awful lot of dogs. I don't know what the number is. Cassie, you might be able to pull it up, but whatever number it is, there's probably at least 4 times as many dogs in this town. And that's just a comment I want to make in general and about the dog park and the investment in dog parks. We all know how expensive real estate is in Boulder County. And I think dog owners and users of that park, especially that live in the town of Lyons, should be helping pay for it through their dog registrations. Thanks.
You, further comments?
I
Seeing none,
agree with that.
yeah. Anything else?
I have to drop off. I'm at my hard stop. I will watch the rest of this meeting later. I'm glad it's being recorded. And I would just like to state that I think wildfire mitigation should be our top priority. And so in regards to funding for that, I'll watch later and keep myself informed. So sorry I have to jump off. And thank you, everybody.
Thank you. Have a good evening. All right. That moves us to Wildfire Task Force.
This is a separate handout, couple pages long. And I don't know if you want me to try and pull it up or if we want to just look through it, or if you all had a chance to look through it. It's pretty wordy. We'll let the mayor maybe.
I think that most of us have had a chance to look through it. I'm more interested in how people feel about it and comments that the Board of Trustees has on the strategy that was presented to us.
I'd like to start off, Mr. Mayor.
Go ahead, sir.
As I was looking over this current, our past agendas and the current one that was brought to us by staff, so thank you very much, everybody. I like it, the way you've done it, and just go down the list. As I've always worked with fire mitigation, it was a concern of mine 3-4 years ago on the board, and was kind of looked at. I would love to see us go to between $100,000 and $125,000 and fund it 50-50. General fund, parks fund, because a lot of the land is on the parks, Martin Parcel's parks. Got a lot of dead timber sitting in and around Laverne Johnson Park. It's also could be a liability issue for our guests. So I'd like to throw that out there and start with that. See where we think.
Further comments?
I agree with Trustee Caravas and with what Trustee Rogan said, that this is a very, very high priority item. And just for the board's information, this came up also at the PRC meeting last night. And there, as you know, there are, in particular with regard to the Martin parcel, that there, Boulder County, as I understand it, has now agreed to do a survey and perhaps even like flag where their right of way continues to intersect to the Martin parcel. It was suggested by Director Cosgrove to the PRC that access from County Road 69 using Boulder County's right of way, which they've said that they're willing to do, is necessary to do fire mitigation on the Martin parcel. You know, there are other access to the Martin parcel from the park side. I'm sure that accessibility from all sides is desirable. But and the suggestion was made by Director Cosgrove that maybe 25,000 could be sought for the 2023 budget for that purpose. To me, that's not near enough, and it's not near soon enough. I would like to see, Trustee Caravas's suggestion was 100,000 to 125,000. I would like to see at least $100,000 splitting between the two funds. I think is appropriate, because some of these are parks properties and some are not. In terms of general fund, you're really looking at the general welfare of the community in terms of preventing fire risk. And it may not be appropriate at a budget session, but if necessary, I would like the Board of Trustees to give direction to town staff that fire mitigation is a top priority, and give them direction to get it done. And the suggestion that we're only going to spend $25,000 on the Martin parcel in 2023 is frankly struck me as not the way to go. It needs to be expedited. and prioritized. And so I support Trustee Caravas's suggestion in that regard. And I'm fine with either 100 or 125.
Further comments?
My only comment was, in my discussions with Dave Cosgrove, he told me 2022, and that was a match to leverage 125. So if we can get 100,000 in fire mitigation grant and match it with 25, that would be ideal, I think, for 2022. So am I hearing too, we want to put the 25 grand in for this year as a potential match too?
No.
We want to put 125 in. But you want me to leverage grants if I can.
I'm in favor of the suggestion that the Fire Mitigation Task Force made of hiring grant writers to leverage, to try to leverage what we can. But I'm not suggesting that we hold off on doing fire mitigation on the Martin parcel or Laverne Johnson Park in particular until we get grants. I'm talking about spending our own money for it. And then if we do 125 and some of that is used as match funds for grants, that's fine. But I want to make sure we have enough fund on our own, not depending on any grants, to get started on those things and do as much as we can with that much money. Because I think this is, there's grant timing deadlines and funding deadlines and paperwork and all that kind of stuff. And I don't think we got time to wait. I want to spend our own money on that. And if we can use some of our money and leverage grants as well, that's great. But we need to get going. We're behind on this. And that's what the Fire Task Force told us. We, the town of Lyons, have not done what we should have done to this point to prevent fire tragedies like we've seen in California and like almost happened to us in September of 2020. We got to get going on this. And not wait for grants, get going on our own. And to the extent we can also leverage grants to do that too.
Any further comments? I walked the Martin parcel today. It's actually incomprehensible how much downwood and fuel exists there. In regard to one access point, I would just suggest that around the perimeter that's adjacent to the dirt, to the skate park, thank you so much, that there is so much fuel along that perimeter that is so dangerous and so close to that facility that we could at least start to mitigate the perimeters of that parcel. But this is a huge project, and I don't mind appropriating the money. I don't mind at all, because I think that it is incumbent upon us to alleviate this danger. But the Laverne Johnson fuel is in the county. It's on the other side of the river mainly, and also we have a situation that we would also want county support in regard to mitigating properties that are in the county. So to get back to my point about not minding spending the money, I would much prefer to move as quickly as possible to try to leverage that money in regard to grants and the grantsmanship that the fire mitigation group talked to us about. We can use, for instance, 25,000 and as a match to 100, but we should move forward on mitigation with our own money as well. Because like I said, that's a lot of that fuel is really close to the park. And it staggered me to see how much was out there and what would happen if it did light on fire and send embers into the trees in the parks and then down into the confluence. You know, it was a horrifying thought, but having lived through the fire that came so close to us, I think that this is something that we should address immediately. And again, I'll rely on you, Administrator Simonson, as long as anybody, along with anybody else that we may be able to get grant assistance from to be able to procure the grants and leverage this money as much as possible, even though we would be willing to spend $100,000 of our own money. If we could turn $25,000 or $50,000 of that into a couple of $100,000, I would much prefer to see that, as everybody would, because I think that this is a huge project. I think that the numbers that we're talking about are going to be dwarfed by getting this particular parcel in a situation where the fire mitigation, a gentleman who's an expert would be satisfied. This was the number one concern on his list. So I'll rely on the experts and I'll rely on the grantsmanship that we have in-house and that we may hire. And I would be willing to also spend a substantial amount of our own funds. The Parks Fund is in good shape. The Martin parcel will most undoubtedly be zoned parks once it's annexed. So I think it's a park's responsibility. And I think we should move ahead as quickly as possible. Further comments?
I would agree with Trustee Caravas and Trustee Browning. As I look at the Wildfire Task Force report here, I see that they recommend 20 to 68K for the matching funds. I'd go with the high end. I'd do 68. The contract grant writer they had down here for 10,000. That brings it up to 78. If we allocate 100, that leaves 22K left over for us to do the Martin parcel. I will say something about the Martin parcel that if you've walked that, Mayor Angelo, you understand that the properties to the west, although they don't have the amount of dead fuel that the Martin property does, still have a substantial amount of overgrowth and brush. I think it's important that it all be done in concert. I don't know how we spend our money with the private landowners to get those parcels mitigated as well. Because if you look at it, you see a fire sweeping down through, like from Anderson's or Carroll's property in that direction. It's going to come right through that field. It's going to build up in fuel with those adjacent parcels to the west. And even if the Martin parcel is properly mitigated, boy, there's a lot of fuel there that'll still send a lot of embers over into the confluence. So I think it's important we get the private landowners on board as well. So I would support the 100K. If you want to go to 125, I'm okay with that as well.
Further comments?
What if we went to 125K and that included the $10,000 that the task force had requested for grant writers? So 10,000 of that would go for grant writers and the other 115 would go for either match or direct spending on fire mitigation with the Martin parcel of priority.
Would all those, how much of those funds would come out of the parks budget? And how much would we have to
We
allocate?
suggested 50-50.
Okay, I can deal with that. That's fine.
I'm good with that.
Further comments?
I have a question, Mr. Mayor.
Go ahead, sir.
Would my colleagues be interested in adding that as off our analysis of fund activity balance sheet that we've set up Fund 10 for capital projects? Setting up this as Fund 11 or 12 for fire mitigation each year, trying to fund it. So we build up enough. Should a big project come in Boulder County in the state, we have actual large amounts of money to fund. And we can also continue, if our staff is able to get a grant writer that finds other grants, then we've got other monies that are being accumulated over the years. Instead of a one-time deal.
I'd ask the town staff administratively, is that going to add significant burdens to the record keeping and staff or not? I mean, I don't know. I think we could. Don't know.
Well, typically, what I have seen in other areas is you can have a capital fund that can be used for multiple category purposes. So for example, you have a capital fund that has a streets portion, and then it also has a wildfire mitigation category to it. So we can utilize one fund for multiple capital purposes if that's the choice. Otherwise, we can keep it in the parks fund and split fund it as well.
Yeah, the risk I would see from lumping multiple purposes together is you have a project in one fund that runs a little bit over, and the temptation is to borrow from the other one. And you know, particularly for streets, which we haven't gotten to yet, but I'm really, I put great importance on keeping a dedicated streets fund that, you know, doesn't get dipped into for other purposes. But if you can track it adequately out of those two funds for what goes to this purpose, and I'm fine with that. I think if it's easier to account for it that way than setting up yet another fund, I've got confidence in the staff's ability to do that.
Can it be specifically allocated?
If we kept it within the current funds, is that what you're asking?
Yes.
Oh.
No, as a general capital fund, can it be specifically allocated within that? That was the Mayor Pro Tem's concern, is that you would have a street fund, and if it ran low, you could borrow money from the fire mitigation aspect of it. Is there a way that it can be specifically allocated within a general capital fund?
You can utilize, we can utilize activity codes for tracking purposes, but technically within a fund, you're appropriating at the fund level. So it would just be an internal control method.
All right, so it's a matter of staff tracking it accurately.
Correct.
Okay. I'll concur with my fellow trustees in regard to the amounts. And I had mentioned, I don't know if you were here yet, Trustee Lowell, that we would have to coordinate whenever we could with the county in regard to the property that's in the county. As much as we could. Your concern about not being able to worrying about, you know, properties that are in the county that border the Martin parcel. I think.
No, I heard that, and we're gonna have to coordinate with a whole bunch of other people too, because as I look at the fire mitigation plan, I also see this parcel labeled 6, which is the South Ledge ditch and the CMAX property behind it. So we're gonna be talking to a lot of people. It's not just our town land.
Okay.
I mean, I agree we need to coordinate, but we also can't hold up the things we need to do on our property because of them. I mean, I don't want to get to a situation like we did, for example, on the river mitigation after the flood when Bell just wouldn't cooperate and kind of torpedoed the project. We need to do what we can do on our properties, and then hopefully if we get the county involved as they should be in giving assistance and advice to us on mitigating our properties, because they have a lot of experience at that, that will lead the county to also try to work with surrounding landowners, including their own property across from Laverne Johnson Park, which has been under discussion with them for a long time without resolution. Maybe that will spur them to action, but I don't think we can possibly hold up on addressing our issues on our property and just if nearby landowners say, I don't want to do anything.
I agree with that. Any further comments? Okay, hopefully we can leverage our money into some additional grant funding. Next.
The next is the Utilities and Engineering Board. While they have no requests listed specifically here, there are some notes later on in our agenda from the meeting that recently occurred. We can go over those if you want when we get to that agenda item.
Okay.
And then the Sustainable Futures Commission, there are no requests listed here. However, I do believe that there was a discussion of a subject matter expert for electrical issues that was discussed. And I believe we currently have the amount in the budget that would be necessary for that, while utilizing grants for the majority of it that are also already accounted for.
Good, and I agree with the subject matter expert, and we have an opportunity because I've been studying electricity full time, especially since the election, and we have a lot of additional information that we need to become familiar with, and if we involve the subject matter expert in that field of electricity, I think that we will be able to move forward in a manner that will prepare us for the future. And there's also a lot of money available in the grid forward legislation that was recently passed. So I think that again, with the expertise that a subject matter expert would have firm, basically, that we would also be able to get substantial grants to help us with things that will help us define resiliency even further in the future. Any other comments? Was there anything else that you wanted to discuss, Finance Director Eystone?
Not on the boards and commissions requests. That covers this section of the agenda.
Okay.
The other, I think I'm just going to pull up the workshop notes. Let's see, maybe. Sorry, my screen sharing isn't cooperating. Let's see. So number one was the item that we just discussed, which was the boards and commissions. So just continuing on the staff questions for the board. The second portion was how much would the board like to set aside for the capital fund for 2022? And this goes back to the discussion of the streets portion of the capital fund. The options might be the general fund, which currently has an estimated balance of 600,000, although that will decrease a little bit with some of these boards and commissions requests, probably more so with the wildfire mitigation. And then there's the property tax mill levy research that we had done with DOLA that is listed down below as well. For some of that, we're still in the process of researching. So those are the two options that we might think about. So I think we're just kind of looking at direction of how much ideally would we like to allocate towards the capital fund for streets projects. I think the prior workshop we had discussed, we definitely want to continue that and we don't want to stop it for 2022, but how much would we like to allocate?
Don't I recollect $200,000? Is that not correct, Mayor Pro Tem?
Yeah, I mean, that was discussed. I'd like to see us do the same amount we did last year. I mean, the suggestion was that if keeping the mill levy the same produced an additional amount that that could be included and maybe keep some more of the surplus in the general fund. If that becomes either not possible for Tabor calculation reasons, and if we've got $600,000 and we're going to spend of excess reserves in the general fund, and we're going to spend about roughly 75 for fire mitigation, then I'd like to see another $300,000 put into the street fund myself, because I think that got neglected for so long that it's time we start doing catch up. And if we've got it this year, I'd like to put it aside, because who knows what next year will bring. If we're short on that next year, then you don't put as much in or you don't put any in. But while we've got the money, that's where I'd like to see it go. That's a priority of mine. And I get that from a lot of people. I guess we'll see as part of the comprehensive plan, but that's something I hear from people. Why don't you do something about the streets?
Further comments?
I would agree. 300,000. We talked about it last year. We build this fund up close to $1 million. It allows us, if we have to go out for bonding. And if you can show you've got cash in the bank, cash you've been saving, you're able to fund it. It gives you a better interest rate. It gives you a better chance. Otherwise, that still gives us plenty of money to do a lot of the projects in the other parts of town that have been neglected for a very long time.
Trustee Lowell?
I'm just musing here. Where in the budget is the allocation for the clawback money? What is that $100,000 again this year?
Great question. That you'll see is located. We have the fund balance on the analysis of fund balance. So it shows what was there for 2021, which was 200,000 that we allocated from parks. And then we, for 2022, are also projecting 200,000 out of the general fund. So that 600,000 estimate of fund balance that we are having left over also takes into account that we're also setting aside that 200,000 for clawbacks.
So at the end of this budget cycle, there'll be 600 or 800 in there.
At the end of 2021, we will estimate about 600,000. 300,000 would be in the general fund, and 300,000 would be in the parks fund. And then in 2022, we are setting aside an additional 200,000 from the general fund that would be or could be utilized for those clawbacks.
So it's going to be 800K.
Right at the end. Mm-hmm.
So I'm just musing out loud here. So we keep doing this. We keep banging away 200,000 every year for the next, I don't know, 3 or 4 years. What happens at the end of that when these clawbacks don't become reality and we're looking at 1.6 or $2 million in those funds? What can we use that for? Is that just sitting there for?
It is.
Yeah.
Merry Christmas.
Yeah, Merry
Project.
Christmas, right. Hey, guess what? It's a tax-free year this year. No more property taxes this year.
Of course, the opposite is also possible. We get a bit.
I get it, Mark. I get it. It's a real consideration, but I was just curious what we were allocating and where that money was going. So, Thanks.
Great.
Trustee Wah,
I think we should put 200,000 in there, or 300,000, the same as last year.
and Trustee Miller.
I'm fine with the 300,000 as well.
Okay, that's
Yeah,
the
and
direction.
I say so too. Yeah.
Okay,
Great. And I believe the next one is just the question on the 2022 ARPA funds. So as you remember, we're going to get 275,000 in January. We have 150 that we're setting aside for Summit. And we're just trying to figure out the prioritization for that. One of the suggestions was additional Long Peak construction costs, or if there's other suggestions as well.
do we have any idea what the additional Longs Peak construction costs are going to be?
Aaron's on the phone, or he's on the call.
Right, I really thought for 2022, we were looking at putting that towards the re-rating of the wastewater plant. And the
Aaron,
20
I thought, oh. never mind.
2021 extra ARPA money was gonna go to Longs Peak. In any of my budgeting, I had included 35,000 left over after the Welch Court and First Avenue projects this year, which were scheduled to be allocated, would get the ARPA funding from 2021. And sorry, I didn't catch this earlier. It's my fault. I should have seen it and said that's what we wanted, but I thought that, right, it should go to the wastewater plant re-rating project, because I think the Welch Court is already covered in other plans and the budgeting that's further discussed in 2021, because that potentially should all be paid for in 2021. We may get stuck and have paving drift into 2022. But I don't know, if the way things keep going the way they are, maybe we get paving done and we're done in 2021. So I'd put that, do you want to put the other 125,000 towards the wastewater re-rating? To say that's a mistake I didn't catch, and so you could look at it that way.
It would definitely help some of that fund balance issue, because right now we have 300,000 budgeted for the re-rating. Is that the approximate total cost, Aaron?
Yes,
Yeah,
and that's
so-
increasing it from the 200,000 we had a couple years ago because of where costs are now.
And so what you're saying, Finance Director, is that will help the water and sewer fund?
It would, yes, it would definitely. Because right now, as you might recall, we had the shortage that we weren't or might not be able to meet that 3-month reserve. So this would help it significantly
Okay,
meet that goal.
I support that 100% then. Any other comments by the board?
Yeah, I do too. I sat in on the last UEB meeting specifically to hear Director Kaplan run through the numbers on all this. And I mean, you could label this as going for the going to the wastewater treatment plant improvements or going to the Longs Peak construction, but both of those are projects within the wastewater fund. So that if you put the leftover 35,000 from 2021 ARPA funds into that fund, and the 125 from that's not reserved for Summit in next year's ARPA funds there, that's $160,000 of ARPA funds going into the wastewater fund, from which we've budgeted for and plan to spend for both the wastewater treatment plant and to do Longs Peak. The projection was, if I understood it right, to the UEB was, and to the board at our last workshop, was that we were somewhere around $190,000 or $200,000 short of the desired 3-month reserve for that fund. So if you put $160,000 of ARPA funds there, you're within about $30,000. And I wouldn't begin to try to explain it, but Director Kaplan walk the UEB through some potential savings on the, in various respects on the Longs Peak improvements that might bridge that last, $30,000 to $40,000 gap. And so at least if you use the ARPA funds, you're close. And, if you're looking at a $30,000 to $40,000 shortfall toward the end of next year, the board, the future board can probably address that in some respects by adjusting timing of expenditures or something, but we wouldn't be $200,000 short of a 3-month minimum reserve, and we don't want to be there. So I think putting the ARPA funds into the water wastewater fund where they're most badly needed is a wise thing to do. And I think the auditors will recognize that an effort was made to try to address the deficiency in that fund.
Further comments?
I would agree.
Concur.
Okay. That's the direction.
Great. The next item was the discussion of paying off the electric note or adding it into the regular debt service for 2022 budget. And this was brought, Aaron did bring this to the UEB as well. And their request for the current budget period was to not pay off the debt and then reevaluate in a future year.
I'll concur with the recommendation of the UEB.
I do too. I think that's the way to go.
Agree.
Same here.
Trustee Miller? That's what we'll do, Cassie.
Okay. The next section were just some staff proposed adjustments to the 2022 budget. These are additions that were not in the draft. And the first one was the HR consultant. And I think Victoria might better speak to this as she is a little bit more knowledgeable about this, but this would replace the position that was eliminated from the budget and add a consultant.
So it was actually not eliminated from the budget, but when Ben
Oh.
vacated his position, we evaluated what our actual needs are in this area now that we're down to less than 20 staff again. And so we put out just a request for some proposals on what are other small communities around us doing. And we found out that it's not uncommon to have an HR consultant who's like available on an on-call basis. So we looked into this a little further. We had 5 people respond to say, yeah, we would be interested in providing, updating all your personnel policies, your job descriptions, looking at your benefits package, that sort of thing, but also be available when we need them to answer personnel questions and not at the cost of an attorney. So we found someone who would do a not to exceed $2,000 a month and get all of this done for us. So instead of having a full-time position and benefits in the 2022 budget, we're recommending a $24,000 outside professional service to fill that need.
And what will we be saving by approaching this situation in this manner?
I think you'll be saving probably close to $40,000, maybe 50 even.
Okay.
Depending on if the person took full family benefits.
Okay. I don't know. I think that's a good strategy.
I just
Comments?
didn't have the data when we brought together the first budget to know how much they were going to propose. So I
Further
get it.
comment? Further comments from the board?
That's a great idea.
It sounds like a good strategy to me. My only question is, prior to getting all the flood grants, was there ever a HR person at Town Hall?
No, we had the town clerk and myself did that role. And so that's why we've been able to get by, since we've had the vacancy most of this year. But we do have some new standards that need to be met, and our policies need updated. So this person will do an hourly fee to update policies. And actually, I think I could do it yet this year. She said she had availability in December. She thought it would only take 10 hours to get all our policies updated. So I'd like to get that out of the way, and then we'll just have her as needed, not to exceed 2,000 a month next year.
I agree. I know how much more complicated things have become in the last 10 or 15 years in human resource related issues. And I don't want to put that burden on you or Town Clerk Vasquez. So I think this is a good strategy.
We usually end up calling the attorney and then getting charged a lot more.
Or Brandon too. That's right. Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem?
No, I agree. HR has become kind of a specialty area. It's something I always hated to deal with when I was in either government or the private sector. And if you can find a consultant who knows what they're doing, I concur with the recommendation.
Trustee Waugh?
I concur.
Trustee Curvis?
Same.
Trustee Miller?
I'm sorry, I missed that one. I was dealing with my child, so I can't vote on that.
Okay. All right, that's fine. We're going to move on then. Go ahead.
The next addition that's listed here are the legal expenses related to Honeywell, and that was based on the prior workshop information from our attorneys. So this is actually, it was 50,000 before, but then after talking with Aaron, I realized that it needed to be 60,000 because what was currently in the budget, a portion of that account was to be utilized for engineering fees. So it's really a total of 60,000 to get us to approximately $100,000 budget just for Honeywell items.
Comments from the board?
Yes, just a quick footnote. Trustee Rogan called me and talked and said that she had also contacted the mayor about scheduling an executive session soon to kind of discuss generally the Honeywell. I guess arbitration is the proper word now. And but I think for budget purposes that you have to budget as if that's going to continue, on the course it's on right now. And if something happens, settlement or something that changes that, then good, you've got extra money there in that fund. But I think for budget purposes, you need to do this.
Further comments?
I agree with that recommendation for an executive session on this. It's an awful lot of money. It's exactly what we said when we started this lawsuit. It just continues to escalate and grow.
Further comments? No further comments. Trustee Lowe?
Yeah, I'm okay with that figure.
All right. Trustee Miller?
I don't really have any comments. I just, it's unfortunate the legal fees are so high.
Trustee Curvis?
No, I would agree with both of them. Yeah,
And
especially me would be great.
Okay, I do as well. Let's move on.
And I just wanted to make note that any other minor adjustments, the things that we've discussed or the direction that's been given, I plan to note those in red, and I will distribute new budget worksheets for the final budget adoption. So you'll be able to clearly see which accounts have been adjusted from the proposed, and we will make notes of those as well.
All right.
So the next section of this is answering some of the questions that came up from the last workshop. One of the questions was the estimated cost of the dog park. So we got that answer was $45,700. I don't know if you would like me to go through all of these specifically. We definitely can do that if you'd like.
What is the board's preference?
I think we should ask questions if we have any questions on
Okay.
these. I don't think we need to go through them all.
Okay, let's, are there any questions for Finance Director Eystone on any of these items? Trustee Caravas.
Thanks, everybody, for your input. Something you brought up, Casey, on the analysis fund activity balance concerning when it was asked about our clawback monies. My understanding was from my previous notes in previous budgets, the only reason parks came out last year at 200 was to make up for the general fund paying the first 400,000 when it was half and half general fund and parks getting all the money from the federal government. So I believe we agreed a year or so ago that we do a one-time 200,000 from parks, and then the rest of the time will be 100,000 from the general fund and the parks fund. That's what my notes in our notes from years past indicate. Does anybody else remember that?
I remember we made it up that after the first couple of years, someone said, 25 million of this is parks.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And we did
And,
200,000 last year to make up for that. And then it was to go back to 100 split.
Yeah, and to at least talk about consider it.
What is the board's pleasure?
I didn't quite understand the question. The question is whether the 200 should come from the general fund or split it with parks. Is that the question?
Well, we decided to split it with parks, but last year to make up for the 400,000 that came out of the general fund the first 2 years was a one-time 200,000 last year or for this year. And then going back to, then it'll be split 100,000 since it's basically 50-50 and all the money that came in. That's what my notes indicate, and I have written down and then talked to others that remember some of that too, but if we want to keep it the way it is, fine.
I think it's okay the way it is.
Okay.
200 from the general fund. I mean, it's a guess as to whether somebody will claw back or disallow in the future at all, and then it's a guess as to which project they might. You just kind of like, it's like covering spaces on a roulette wheel. Where do you think it's going to land? So I'm fine with the general.
Okay.
It's
fine.
more flexibility and more money in the general fund than the parks fund, and we're doing some pretty significant expenditures in parks, so I'm fine with it the way it is.
Trustee Watt?
I'm fine with the way it is too.
Okay, Trustee Miller.
Yeah, I don't care either way, honestly.
All right. I think it's fine the way it is. So are there any other questions that anybody would like to address this evening? Go ahead, sir.
I got two issues. One, the DOLA request about whether we can retain the current property tax mill levy. I don't want to spend a lot of attorney's fees on that or anything, but and if with a $600,000 balance that we've already talked about, or extra balance in the general fund, it may not be necessary to do that, to look at that, to use that option. My main purpose in suggesting that was to make sure that we were able to fund the streets fund at a level that we have planned to. But I'd still like to see what the answer is there, just to find out for future purposes, for let future boards know what their options are, because there may come a time where that's critical to meeting us, a desired goal. And so I understand. I'm surprised that it hadn't been utilized more by other places, and that it's, DOLA's having to dust off their playbooks on that. But it'd be interesting to know what the answer is for future years, even if we don't use it this year. But I don't think it's critical for this year's budget, since we ended up with that fortunately, our sales taxes came in great this year and gave us some more flexibility. The second issue that I don't think we've talked about, but I don't believe we make decisions on yet, is the source of the $60,600 match for the Broadway project. I've suggested a couple of times that we look at the URA balance that's been accrued, and I think the staff is working to try to do projections on what that balance in the URA fund will be. I said I'm not in favor of taking that out of streets, although I guess it's possible to do that. So I think we still need to make a decision on that. And along with that, I guess the URA is going to have to meet sometime in November to do its own budget setting. And so those are related questions. If we decide we're going to try to use some of the URA money, then I think the town board needs to make a request to the URA board that they budget that and keep that in the URA budget. So that's an issue we need to decide, I think.
You will be getting an invite. Our next meeting will be, we talked about it, it'll be November 18th. So I'll have that available, and we can try to have a projection at our November 15th meeting. Maybe we can just put it in my admin report for you to think about until we want ready to take action on it.
Okay, thank you.
It will be close, but I think we're going to be just a little short.
And if we're a little short, then we can probably find $10,000 or $15,000 or something to reallocate from somewhere else. We can probably figure that out.
Further questions? Administrator Simonson.
It's not really a question, but if we're, if the board is done with their budget for 2022, I do want to talk just very briefly about 2021 and year ending. Since we started these discussions, there was a recommendation by the board that we consider using some of our vacancy savings in 2021 from lack of staffing and do a retention bonus to our staff. So I spent some time looking at a couple different scenarios for that. The actual vacancy savings that were the true savings is going to be around $223,000. But Cassie and I have taken a look at what other line items we think will be over, and where we may need to use some of those savings for other projects. For example, if you recall, like the meters, the electric meters, they didn't get spent in the year we budgeted them, so we did this year, so we'll absorb that with our excess. So once we take out any of our other budget overages, Cassie and I feel pretty comfortable that that number is going to be around $106,000 of vacancy savings. And that's also counting in where we think 2021 expenses are going to come in at. So we feel comfortable with that. So I just kind of want to walk through this with you, see if I'm kind of in line with where your guys are thinking. So if we use 100,000 as our basis, as I mentioned, I'd like to get this HR person going in December if she's available to do our policies. So if we would use 5,000 or 6,000 of that to get all our policies and job descriptions and things updated in December, that would take 8,000 off that. We still have some people that are due their evaluations and their, their merit increases if they deserve those. So I'm looking at about $84,000, which is a lot of money by the time we back everything out. So I put together two scenarios, and I'm happy to mail those to you guys, but it does include staff names. So I really didn't want to put it on I can, but I would prefer not to because I haven't shared it with them yet either. But I have two scenarios that I've come up with for retention bonuses. One that equals about $40,000 of bonuses, and that includes giving around a $2,500 bonus to the 11 people that have been here since May 2020 or before that stuck around, and then adjusting that for the 5 part-timers that have been here since the the pandemic hit. And then we have 3 full-time employees and 1 part-timer that began in 2021 that have proven to be very, very good employees we want to retain. So they would be at, those full-times would be at a $1,500. So that scenario would spend about 40,000 on retaining bonuses. If the board would be comfortable using 84,000 of the 223,000 towards staff. The other scenario doubles those amounts, and I didn't know if that felt too high to people, but when you put it in the part-timers and stuff, that number comes out to 69,500. So I didn't know how, and like I said, I'll send you the 2 scenarios I came up with. I didn't know if that was in the ballpark of what people were thinking. But there are 11 full-timers that have been here through the whole pandemic, 3 new full-timers this year, and then a total of 6 part-timers. And that's our whole staffing. So we have 14 full-time and 6 part-time. So I know that you guys made that suggestion. I don't want to, we've never done this before. So I just want to make sure it's kind of in line with what the spirit of what you were talking about. And then I do have one other concern I just want to share with the board. And it seems like this is becoming an issue as I turned on the news last week. We have several staff that of course take vacation over the holidays. And there will be several days where it'll probably just be me at town hall and me and Cassie or me and Dolores. And so some of the staff did say, is it possible that to regenerate and, you know, as part of this, again, in the spirit of retention and regaining energy, that the board, the way the holidays land this year for Christmas and New Year's Eve, would there be any interest in the board of closing town hall for that time between those holidays, which is the 3 days between December, it'd be the 28th, 29th, and 30th. And we have never done that before either. But I do know I won't leave one staff in town hall open to the public. It just is not safe with cash and people upset and whatever. But we always make sure we have at least 2 people here. And we, of course, have on-call and do snow removal and all that stuff. But so those are some things I just wanted to run by you after I put together a couple scenarios. See if we're in line with what you were thinking or if that's way out of line from what you were thinking.
I'm anxious to see them.
You want to see them visually? Okay. I'm happy.
Yeah, it's definitely in line with what I was asking for about exactly what you said. How much money wasn't spent that we budgeted for that exact position. So no, I think that I'd like to see it in writing so I can mull over it and look at it.
Yep.
Okay.
Thank you.
I'm happy to. I'd like to, if we can, try to keep this kind of in line with our other budgets so that Cassie and I want to make sure it gets in the 2021 payroll, not, you know, that carryover one that always happens between December and January. So we'd like to do it for the December 10th payroll if the board does that, so that we don't have any issues with which fiscal year it hits.
How does the rest of the board feel about it? Mayor Pro Tem?
I'm generally supportive of it. I'd like to see the emails. I didn't quite get all those numbers, but yeah, in general.
Oh, that's fine. Yeah, I just didn't want to post people's names and amounts.
That's fine. No, that's proper. Trustee Watt.
Agreed. Thank you for putting it together. I look forward to reviewing it.
Yes, Trustee Lowe.
Yeah, just let me expound for a minute here. I'm certainly in favor of the bonuses. The philosophical question, though, is how do we couch this as because I assume it's just a one-time unless we intend to go forward with this year after year. What we're going to have to come up with some title for these bonuses. I maybe you have an idea, Administrator Simonson. And the second point, I have zero issue with closing down town hall for that week. I think that's a wonderful idea, but my concerns are those 3 days would then essentially be paid holidays for town staff, correct? And how many holidays does town staff currently get paid for?
Well, it's currently written into our personnel policies. I think we have 11 holidays and then 1 personal day. So we already have that. It's kind of like what we're hearing about teachers. The school districts are literally not having school on Friday because they don't have enough teachers, because everybody, yeah. So what I'm saying is if everyone requests those days off, I'm going to be here. So, I mean, I'll be here, but we can either still have them take their vacation time. It could be either way. They could still take their vacation, but if there's not people here, I can't continue to have that door open and having potential of a problem in town hall and no one here to deal with it. But so we could do it that way, or we just close it. We could go like with the lower retention and close that week paid, or we still have them use vacation. I just want the flexibility if during that week, I find that there's just me here. I'd prefer the door be closed and me still at my desk working than to face potential problems. It's just always been a policy. We don't let one person be here.
So in your time serving as administrator,
Yes.
we've certainly had holidays where we've had this 3-day gap between Christmas and New Year's. Have we ever run into a staffing problem before?
I've never closed town hall except on official holidays. We have never even had a snow day closure because we all live, there's enough of us in town. You can always get here. But I think it's just a matter of people are kind of in that exhausted COVID burnout thing, and they're going to use their time this year. So I just kind of want to throw that out there. I just listening to people and I've been telling people you better get your, vacation request in. And I'm just kind of seeing that writing on the wall.
Well, you certainly don't want to force people to take time off if they have designs on, a winter vacation somewhere. So we can't just summarily say, well, we're going to be open on the 28th through the 30th. If you don't want to come in, you got to use your personal time or your vacation time.
Oh, I mean, normally they just put in for vacation time. Yeah.
Gotcha.
And they still can. I would just have to deny some of them if I want to make sure that there's 2 people at Public Works and 2 people at Town Hall.
Yeah.
But 4
and so to my first point, you certainly thought about what you want to call this one-time bonus, and to make it absolutely clear, it is a one-time and it's not to be expected year after year.
No, it is a one-time COVID retention bonus to acknowledge the extra work that the 11 people that have been here have picked up for the 11 people that weren't here. It's just reallocating those salaries to the people who actually did the work.
Excellent. Thank you.
Trustee Miller?
Yeah, I am fine with the whole salary or the whole bonus thing. I want to see the numbers, of course, like everybody else.
Sure.
And the holiday closure of town hall, I think, is probably just fine. It's pretty quiet around here during those times anyway, for the most part, unless like there's a downline, something like that. Which obviously the emergency crews need to be available. But
No, we'd be on call.
Yeah.
And I'd still have, we'll check the front phone and everything still. I mean, I'll make sure all that happens. It's just a matter of someone maybe coming in for 2 or 3 hours.
Yeah.
Versus sitting here for 8 and the phone never, it's just.
Yeah, no, I know that I know that that's the way it's been before, and I think that's totally fine. So whatever is at the pleasure of the
Well, we don't have to, I mean, no decisions tonight. I just
Sure.
wanted to kind of throw out there after I, heard you guys talking about this as a option, then I just started looking at it.
I have to feed my child, so I need to run, but, you
Thank
guys
you.
have fun.
Good evening.
We're almost
Good evening, Trustee Miller.
Bye.
Trustee Waugh.
Yeah, I'm all for town hall closing that week if we can do it. I don't know if all of you are aware, but Bank of the West is closed for 10 days and they didn't announce it and they didn't tell anybody and nobody can get to their safe deposit boxes and all of that kind of stuff. So
There are banks. There
I
are
just-
banks. We have to figure out how
Yeah.
to deposit every day.
yep, I'm with you 100% on that. So yeah, my only concern is there may be some people who own properties here that this is the time of year they come and they're expecting to do things. So,
What
believe
if
me,
we had a
I'm
phone
sit-
number? Wonder if we had a
I'm-
phone number posted on the door or something.
Yeah, I mean, I'm sitting at the front desk at Wecasa right now because I can't afford to pay anybody to sit here and nobody wants to sit here, but somebody's got to be here. So I know exactly what you're talking about.
Yep.
So,
Yeah.
from that perspective, I think let's just try to be open and flexible. I know, you want to be on vacation, but at the same time, if somebody needs something, we should be.
Oh, absolutely. No, we've
But,
never closed, so I'd have to figure it out. Yeah.
And I don't know. I can't even imagine. I'm sure you could come up with 15 scenarios of something that somebody actually has to be in town hall to do. But, I can't think of too many that they have to be there. And if they can get a check, they can make a payment, there is a slip in the door or whatever, I'm totally fine with it. But, I think, in general, for some other people, maybe that haven't been in the private sector for a long time, the idea of requesting vacation and having it denied doesn't really exist anymore. It's pretty much, this is when I have vacation and I'm going on vacation this week. So, I mean, Victoria or Administrator Simonson, as kind of the chief executive, and myself know that we work Christmas and Thanksgiving because everybody else just says I'm out.
It's
So,
gone. Yeah. That's interesting because Bank of the West and the Town of Lyons are the only two places to do notaries. So if they're closed, I guess it will be us. Yeah.
And Bank of the West says it's because bigger branches don't have employees and our employees needed to go there, but.
All right. They said the Bank of the West in one of them in Longmont is totally shut down. Every employee has COVID or exposure. And so they took our employees to run the other bigger branch to keep it open.
Okay.
But yeah, with no notice, I didn't find that to be, that was tough for us today too. So no, I don't want to leave anybody in the cold. I don't have plans over Christmas. So I mean, if I sit here all week, I'll sit here all week, but it does seem, yeah, I know it gets pretty quiet during those few days.
Can't wait to see your analysis, Administrator Simonson.
Okay, what kind of format then do we follow up with that? Because, I mean, it's technically 2021, it's all under staffing and wages. Do we add an item to the December 6th agenda or November 15th? How do we do that?
As approval of the board for the policy?
Well, just to kind of get feedback, or do you want me to just get it individually from people and I'll put together something as a proposal?
Yeah, I mean, I thought that's what you said that you were going to do.
Well, no, I'm going to send you all of this, but I didn't know if the follow-up, if you wanted it during the public meeting, or do you want it just to be more of just input and it's my decision since it's under salaries?
I think it is your decision, and I think that since you've discussed it with the board, unless individual board members have an objection, once you send out the scenario that you're talking about, or the two scenarios, get feedback from the Board of Trustees, and then at your discretion, implement the policy you think is the best.
I might sort of mildly object to that. I think in for purposes of transparency and not to be accused of doing something behind closed doors or under the table, given this is taxpayer money, I wouldn't be adverse to having it put forward as a resolution as soon as possible, maybe on the 15th, if we all concur with what Victoria sends out. I just think it's good policy if we're going to spend 40 or 69K that it be out there in the public eye.
Well, and once you see them, if you have other suggestions, do it. I was not comfortable with that whole amount. I want to make sure we have enough padding, for the end of the year in case something would happen. But we both feel very comfortable, that if we spend 40 or 60 of 223, we should be fine. And the staff will be thrilled with either. I can tell you that. The staff have never had a bonus, so they'll be thrilled.
I agree with Trustee Lowell, as long as it doesn't delve into personal names. Keep the names anonymous. Is that okay?
We could do it just as that there's a resolution that we can have the whereas is due to the COVID pandemic and people working that this is a trend within the United States right now for this year.
Yeah.
And that we therefore expend whatever it is, 40,000 toward retention bonuses. Okay, we can make it pretty generic.
Good. Everybody agree with that?
Agree.
Yes.
I think a resolution. I think a resolution would be good, if for no other reason than to underscore the appreciation of the board for people sticking it out. What Victoria said about the schools is right. Pam got drafted into emergency.
Oh boy.
This again today, and tell me St. Vrain Valley just ran out of teachers, and it's kind of like a pent up thing that the teachers have all this leave time accumulated over the years, and they're just burnout, exhausted. They feel underappreciated, and they're going to take their leave time. And there aren't enough subs stepping up to defend. They just don't have people enough to staff the schools.
Mm-hmm.
And I think you see that some with town employees too. It's kind of like a refresher, renew deal. Take this time off, reset your, recharge your batteries. I think it's a good thing to do.
Well, the good news is we made an offer today for the front desk. We made an offer today for the permit tech. If we can get that HR position going, that'd be great. And then, so our only position left is our planner, Yanni's position to fill right now. So I feel a lot better about that, but I do agree. I think I'll send this out. Please give me your individual comments back on which scenario you like or how you feel about things. And then I'll put together a resolution either for the 15th or December 6th.
Okay.
And then one last thing is kind of awkward. Do I include myself on that, or is that something you want to deal separately on my own performance appraisal at the end of the year? The retention piece.
No, you should include, I think you should include yourself. You've been here more than anybody else.
No question of a doubt about it. We discussed that.
I didn't want to be presumptuous. So, okay.
All right.
All right. I will get those scenarios out to you guys to review and
Okay.
By the way, I'll volunteer for a front desk shift, but from the 28th through the 30th.
Okay. Well, we might do it.
We did that during the flood.
Sure. Yeah.
That's funny.
If you want to work those days at WeCasa, we pay $17 an hour, Mark.
I didn't say
That's cool.
I'm not working, man. I'm not taking that risk.
I need chips and margaritas to do that, Kenyon, sorry.
Oh. And since
You can get chips and margaritas at WeCasa. You can't get them at Town Hall.
and then
Private
I
industry.
do want to make the board aware that I've been contacted by public health. Apparently 3 members so far of the LEAF board have tested positive for COVID. And it relates potentially either back to a board meeting or the rave to the grave. So they're going to be giving me numbers. And if this appears that it was spread through that activity. They're going to do some analysis. We might have to change our plans for our Christmas parade. So just an FYI, that's a huge 3 people in the same 3 days is a lot. So they are doing some additional analysis, and well, they're doing it not just for us, they're doing it for all sorts of events around the county that they're seeing a surge. But things are 283 people today admitted to the hospital in our state, additional. So I think we're starting a little curve up again. So everyone stay safe and let's stay healthy, because yeah, it looks like it's spreading around town right now.
Okay,
Okay,
Did we skip number 3 on the give feedback and comments from the UEB regarding water and sewer? I didn't think I
we
missed
just
it.
asked the board if they had comments and no one did, or concerns.
Okay, so whatever's
Right.
listed is okay.
They were, yes, they were listed and they were read by everybody in their packets.
Got it. I must have missed that one statement. Thanks.
Okay,
Just because, right, there's no sidewalk going in based on that. So everyone is aware.
there's no sidewalk going into Long's Peak
Not a-
unless you use, yeah.
They're gonna keep the existing sidewalk and not go with the alternate bid. Is that what I understood?
Correct.
Okay, that's where I thought they came out, but okay.
That's what the UEB came down on, unless you wanted to use the streets capital fund
No,
for it.
I don't think so. I think what the UEB, where they came out was the right place.
Okay. I just wanted to be clear, and then I don't bring it up at the utility report next meeting. Thanks.
okay.
Okay, everyone stay well. Cassie, safe travels tomorrow.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.